Have you ever asked yourself why the ache lingers, even when everything around you appears fine? Why there's a heaviness in your chest, a constant dissonance humming beneath your thoughts, like a song you can't shut off? Maybe you've tried to fix it. Meditation, therapy, motivational quotes, telling yourself you're okay, distracting yourself with routines or noise. But the ache persists. It waits for you in the quiet. It wakes with you before the alarm. It walks beside you while you smile and nod your way through another day. And maybe, just maybe, no one has told you this yet. Not because they didn't care, but because they didn't know how. Most of your pain doesn't come from outside of you. It isn't your boss, or your partner, or the lack of money, or the ticking clock of expectations society sets on your back. No, the deepest pain, the kind that paralyzes even when you're surrounded by life, comes from within. From the parts of yourself you've neglected, abandoned, disowned. From the soul that whispers, then shouts, and finally collapses into silence when you refuse to hear it. Carl Jung, the architect of depth psychology, warned us long ago. What you do not make conscious will return as fate. And that is what you are living now. You think you are cursed, but it's only your forgotten self trying to wake you up. You ignore the signals. You call them stress or coincidence. You cover them with substances or habits or people that temporarily distract you. But the pain, oh, it waits. It doesn't need to be loud to be powerful. Sometimes it disguises itself as anxiety, sleeplessness, numbness, or chronic disappointment. Other times it becomes resentment, guilt, or shame. You build stories around it, justify your suffering by pointing outward, blaming circumstances or fate or other people. But none of that truly explains the emptiness. The real explanation, the one that will crack open everything, is that you have drifted so far from your true self that your soul can no longer recognize the life you're living. Jung called it a tragedy of the soul, to live a life that is not yours. And yet, that's the story most people are living. From childhood, you were taught to conform, to please, to adapt, to blend in. And so you learned how to dim your light, how to suppress your instincts, how to polish yourself into something acceptable. The world applauded you for it, called you mature, called you successful. But inside, a part of you was screaming, your wildness, your anger, your hunger for truth. And now you live with that scream buried beneath a smile. That's why the suffering hasn't left. It can't, because your soul knows when it's being betrayed. It isn't the weight of your responsibilities or the cruelty of others that's crushing you. It's the lie you've built your life around. The lie that tells you who you should be, what you should want, what success and happiness are supposed to look like. The lie that made you abandon your inner compass for the comfort of approval. That disconnection, that fracture between your inner truth and your outer life, is the real source of your pain. And it's not something that will go away with positive thinking or surface-level fixes. It demands something more. It demands that you return to yourself, that you unearth what has been buried, that you stop pretending to be okay and start getting honest about who you are and what you want. That's the real work, the terrifying, liberating work. Because the truth is, healing isn't about feeling better. It's about becoming real. And becoming real means confronting the parts of yourself you've spent your life trying to avoid. Maybe you're at a breaking point. Maybe you're smiling in public but falling apart in private. Maybe you've learned how to function with the pain so well that no one suspects a thing. But you know. You always know. That ache in your chest isn't going anywhere until you stop running. Because the pain you feel isn't here to punish you. It's here to teach you. Pain is the soul's way of getting your attention. It's not the enemy. It's the invitation, the call to return. And if you're willing to listen, truly listen, not with judgment or defensiveness, but with presence, then everything can change. Because you don't need another motivational speech. You don't need another 10-step guide or morning routine. You need to face yourself. That's where the real transformation happens. Not when you fix your life, but when you stop betraying yourself. Jung spent his life exploring the dark terrain of the human psyche. He knew that the light could not be found by avoiding the darkness. He believed that the only way to truly heal was to bring the unconscious into consciousness. And that means facing the part of yourself you fear the most, your shadow. The shadow isn't evil. It's not demonic. It's not broken. It's simply the part of you that you've pushed away because it didn't fit the mold. Your anger, your lust, your greed, your shame, your envy, your fear, all of it lives in the shadow. Not because it's bad, but because you were taught it was unacceptable, and so you buried it. But here's the thing. What you bury doesn't die. It festers, it leaks, it sabotages. It lives in your habits, your reactions, your relationships. It's the reason you lash out or shut down or chase people who can't love you back. It's the reason you repeat patterns you hate, because the shadow isn't quiet. It's just invisible. And until you shine a light on it, it will keep driving your life from the backseat. Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. That's what's happening. Your suffering isn't random. It's your shadow trying to be seen. But facing the shadow is not easy. It's not a weekend retreat or a clever journal prompt. It's raw, honest, uncomfortable work. Because it means admitting that you are not just the version of yourself you like to present to the world. You are also the parts you hate, the parts you judge in others, the parts you deny. You are the selfishness you criticize, the arrogance you condemn, the jealousy you pretend not to feel. And facing that truth can feel like dying. But it's not death, it's rebirth. Because the moment you stop running from your shadow is the moment you begin to integrate it. And integration is the beginning of freedom. The shadow isn't your enemy, it's your exiled power. It's the strength you disowned, the fire you were told to put out. And when you bring it home, when you learn to love even your most unwanted parts, you become whole. So the question is, are you ready? Are you willing to look at the parts of yourself you've avoided for years? Are you willing to admit the truth of your pain, not as a victim, but as a participant? Because healing doesn't happen in denial. It happens in ownership, and ownership starts with presence, with listening, with sitting in the discomfort long enough to understand what it's trying to say. The shadow doesn't need to be fixed. It needs to be heard. And the moment you listen, truly listen, is the moment it begins to soften. You start to see that beneath the rage is the child who was never protected. Beneath the shame is the heart that longed to be accepted. Beneath the control is the fear of being helpless. Your shadow is not a monster. It's your most wounded self, still waiting for you to come back. The first step is awareness. The second is compassion. You don't need to punish yourself for having a shadow. You need to bring it into the light with love. That's what Jung meant by individuation, the process of becoming whole. Not perfect, not pure, whole. To become whole is to embrace every part of yourself, especially the ones you were told to hide. Because in the end, that's the only way to end the suffering. Not by escaping who you are, but by returning to it, by honoring the truth of your soul, even when it's messy, even when it's hard, even when it breaks every rule you were taught, because that's the only truth that will ever set you free. When you begin the process of turning inward, of meeting your shadow eye to eye, something irreversible happens. You begin to see clearly what once overwhelmed you in fog. The fear you thought was protecting you is exposed as a barrier. The guilt you carried like armor begins to crack, revealing the vulnerability underneath. You realize you've been at war with yourself for years, fighting battles no one could see, punishing yourself for feelings you didn't ask to have. But now, with your awareness expanded and your eyes no longer closed, the terrain of your soul looks different. And yet, this awareness isn't the finish line. It's just the crossing of the threshold. Knowing your pain, your triggers, your shadow, that is the beginning. What matters next is what you do with that knowing. Because truth without action is just another illusion. Healing demands movement. It demands that you walk willingly into the places you used to avoid, that you respond differently when the old habits come knocking. This is where the fire becomes useful, where the pain starts to burn, not destructively, but alchemically. This is where transformation begins. There comes a moment in this journey where you stop asking, "Why did this happen to me?" and start asking, "What is this trying to teach me?" That shift changes everything. Because when you stop seeing yourself as a victim of life and start seeing yourself as a student of it, you reclaim your power. You stop blaming and you begin building. You stop running and you start standing. You realize the same pain that nearly destroyed you is also the pain that can liberate you, but only if you're willing to listen. Pain isn't here to ruin you, it's here to redirect you. It's the soul's way of saying, "Not this, not anymore." So when your chest tightens in a room full of people, or your stomach knots at the sound of someone's voice, or your body goes cold at the mention of a name, listen. That is not weakness. That is your inner compass, and it's telling you the truth your mind is too afraid to face. One of the most powerful tools you can use during this phase is radical self-reflection. Not the kind that analyzes everything to death, but the kind that watches with compassion. When you feel triggered, stop and observe. Don't judge, don't react, just sit with it. What memory does it awaken? What fear does it uncover? What unmet need is being exposed? This is not a punishment. This is revelation. Every emotional reaction is an invitation to heal something that's been unresolved. But you cannot heal what you refuse to feel. You cannot change what you continue to avoid. The work is not easy, but it is sacred. And over time, you begin to see patterns for what they are, not curses, but clues. You begin to connect the dots between the abandoned child and the people pleaser, between the shame and the sabotage, between the longing and the self-abandonment. And in that understanding, you begin to forgive yourself, not just for the mistakes you made, but for the years you spent surviving instead of living. Healing is not about becoming a better version of yourself. It's about remembering who you were before the world told you who to be. It's about peeling back the layers of programming and expectation until you find the raw truth underneath. That truth might be messy. It might be inconvenient, but it is yours. And it's the only place where real peace can live. When you stop rejecting your truth, you stop rejecting yourself. And when you stop rejecting yourself, everything starts to shift. Your boundaries get stronger. Your voice gets clearer. Your relationships become more honest. You no longer settle for crumbs. You no longer pretend to be okay, just to keep the peace. You become the peace. And that peace, that stillness inside of you, is not passive. It's powerful. Because it comes from knowing that you no longer need to prove your worth. You simply are. This is where the integration begins. Integration means you no longer see parts of yourself as enemies. You stop trying to kill your ego, or silence your anger, or suppress your desires. Instead, you learn to listen to them. You ask what they need. You hold space for their pain, and slowly they stop lashing out. They stop sabotaging you. Because when the parts of you that were rejected finally feel seen, they soften. They stop needing to scream. You become whole, not by eliminating your darkness, but by embracing it, by weaving it into your light. Jung didn't believe in perfection. He believed in wholeness, and wholeness includes the parts of you that were messy, wounded, flawed, the very parts you were told to hide. Those parts are sacred. They are the roots of your humanity. And when you own them, you become unshakable. Not because you're invincible, but because you're real, because there's nothing left to hide. But wholeness is not the final step. There's one more. And this is the step most people resist. Once you've reclaimed yourself, once you've integrated your shadow and healed your wounds, you are faced with a choice. Will you stay in your private world of transformation, or will you bring that transformation into the world? Jung believed that healing was never just for the self. It was for the collective. He believed that once you've walked through your darkness and found your light, you are called to become a light for others. Not by preaching, not by saving, but by being. By living your truth so boldly that it inspires others to do the same. This is the moment where healing becomes purpose, where pain becomes service, where everything you went through starts to make sense, because now it's not just about you, it's about everyone who still feels lost in the shadows. And here's the truth no one wants to admit. Awakening comes with responsibility. When you know better, you cannot go back. When you see clearly, you can't unsee. The old patterns won't feel right anymore. The old relationships won't satisfy you. The old games won't work, because you've changed. And now, life asks more from you. It asks you to choose differently, to live deliberately, to speak when you used to stay silent, to walk away when you used to stay, to stand up when you used to shrink. This is the cost of consciousness. You lose the ability to pretend, but in return, you gain something priceless. You gain yourself. And when you have yourself, truly have yourself, there is nothing you cannot face. Because now, you are rooted, you are grounded, you are no longer living according to someone else's script. You are the author now. And as the author, you have a sacred duty, not to be perfect, but to be honest, not to fix the world, but to stop contributing to its illusions, not to rescue others, but to show them what it looks like to rescue yourself. That is how change begins, quietly, deeply, authentically. You don't need a platform or a title or an audience. You need presence. You need integrity. You need the courage to keep choosing your truth, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Because that's what healing really is. Not a destination, but a commitment. A daily choice to live from wholeness. A refusal to abandon yourself ever again. So now I ask you, after all you've seen, all you've felt, all you've remembered, what will you do with it? Will you let this awareness fade, like a dream you forget by morning? Or will you anchor it into your life, into your choices, into your breath? Will you take this inner revolution and let it shape the way you move through the world? Because the world doesn't need more noise. It needs people who have done the inner work, people who have faced their pain and turned it into wisdom, people who can sit with others in their darkness without flinching, people who live from the inside out. You have become that person. Now the question is, will you live as that person? No one can walk this path for you. No one can give you the map. But the path is there. And every step you take toward yourself, toward truth, toward integration, matters. Even the smallest step, especially the smallest step. Because this journey isn't about speed, it's about depth. It's about going so deep into your own soul that you come out transformed. Not fixed, not flawless, but free. And freedom, real freedom, is being able to look at every part of your life, your past, your pain, your mistakes, and say, yes, that was me, and still I am whole. This is not the end. This is the beginning of a new way of living, a new way of seeing, a new way of being. You are not broken. You never were. You were simply disconnected. But now, you are home. And from this home, from this sacred inner place, everything is possible. So breathe, rest, and then rise. Because the world is waiting for you. Not the masked you, not the edited version, but the real you. The you that knows your shadow, the you that knows your strength, the you that chose to stay, to feel, to transform. That you is unstoppable.